In this video, I'm going to explain how I calculate the cost of picking up used tires in Kent County as part of the Bulky Waste Collection Days service. My figures are based on an important assumption here, and that is that this truck, this imaginary truck we're going to follow, will pick up only tires. That's not realistic, but I'm making that assumption so that we can allocate the cost of the labor and gas and so on to individual tires so you can see the effect. Now, normally the truck would pick up various kinds of waste, large items like refrigerators, furniture, and the occasional tire. There aren't enough tires discarded by the side of the road to justify driving a truck all over Kent County. However, the truck can pick up tires along with other bulky waste, and on a typical trip the truck might pick up no discarded tires, or I mean, these are tires that are going to be left at the homeowner's driveway, whether the homeowner whether it's the homeowner's tires or tires that have been abandoned in the homeowner's neighborhood. So the truck would drive around on the regular route, and when they come to a tire, they would pick it up and squeeze it in between the fridge and the furniture, and when they get to the Westmorland dump, they have to separate the tire out and put it in a separate pile. When I'm describing this scenario, I'm going to talk about a truck full of tires just so we can calculate the cost. Now, it's also important to note that a company called Track in Minto, that's called TRACC, that's how you spell it, they pick up the tires free of charge from garages across the province and from Westmorland. They don't charge anything because they get the fee that we pay when we buy new tires. So that's how they make money, and they recycle the tires into other products. So those are the assumptions. So let's start with this. What I did was I started with Google Maps, and I looked at Brown's Yard because it's approximately in the center of Kent County, and I calculated the distance from Brown's Yard down to the Westmorland dump. Comes to about 65 kilometers. You can see that figure over here. The 65-kilometer distance here I've got, and I'm also adding in 30 kilometers, which is the distance I figure might be between the houses on the driver's route as he picks up refrigerators and so on. If he's picking up large items, I don't know if he could even get as far as 30 kilometers, but there we are. And so then the other thing I'm assuming here, what I did, the numbers I obtained were from the U-Haul website. I don't know what kind of trucks are used for the garbage pickup service, the large item service, but I'm just using these to approximate the size of a truck. Here I'm using a 15-foot truck, and when I look down here to see what the dimensions are, it says 15 feet, but there's 3 feet here for the mom's attic, so I've taken off 3 feet and made it a 12-foot truck. It's actually 12.5 feet, but whatever, that's good enough. And the dimensions here are 15 by 7 feet 8 inches by 7 feet 2 inches. Go over to the spreadsheet here. You can see that my 12-foot truck, which they call a 15-foot truck, is 12 feet long. Because I'm not including the mom's attic. It's 7 feet wide, which is what they have, but instead of being 7 feet tall, I'm assuming 6 feet tall. So I assume there's some kind of barriers on each side of the flatbed, and then there's also some kind of a gate on the back to keep things in. So that's my assumption, and I'm assuming 6 feet tall is reasonable. If you go to the 23-foot truck description, you'll see that this corresponds with their description of a 23-foot truck. So that means the capacity of the small truck is 504 cubic feet, and the capacity of the large truck is 1,100 cubic feet roughly. Okay, so then you look at the tire dimensions, and I went to my van and looked at what the tires measure, fully inflated. Mine are 28 inches in diameter and 9 inches wide. However, I figured, to account for any challenges in squeezing the tires in together, I allowed for 30 inches by 30 inches by 10 inches, which is 9,000 cubic inches, which comes to 5.2 cubic feet per tire. That's the same in either case, no matter which truck you use. So then what you do is you take the capacity of the truck in cubic feet and you divide it by the cubic feet per tire, and you get 96 tires per truck maximum. That's what a truck will hold. The large one will hold 211 tires. This is assuming we fill it all up with tires, but even if we don't fill it all up with tires, we have to account for the space used by each individual tire. So So in other words, the large truck, 1/211th of the large truck's capacity would be consumed by a single tire. And that's, again, allowing generous dimensions. So then here, looking at the distance from Brown's Yard to Westmorland is 30 kilometers I've allowed for distance between houses. So the total distance driving around and then driving to Westmorland would be 95 kilometers. The small truck would get 8 miles per gallon fully loaded. The large truck would get 7 miles per gallon. Those miles per gallon figures are taken from this website here. You see the miles per gallon. You've got a 15-foot truck at 10 miles per gallon empty and 8 miles per gallon loaded, and the 26-foot truck at 9 miles per gallon empty and 7 miles per gallon loaded. That's where those figures come from. The website is called UPAC, so you can look that up. Okay. Convert that to liters per kilometer, which means turn it upside down and make it metric. That's what you get. The liters per trip, then you'd multiply the total distance, 95, times the liters per kilometer. You multiply those two together and you get that figure. Let me see if I did it right over here. Yes, I did. Okay, so that is the total liters per trip. Let's assume a cost of $1.50 per liter per gas, which is significantly more than it is right now, but I'm being conservative and I'm allowing for bad things to happen, like the price of gas going up. So anyway, $1.50, that's pretty conservative. Then look at the dollar cost for gas to the dump fully loaded. The dollar cost is, what I'm doing here is multiplying the liters per trip times the cost of the gas per liter, and I multiply those two together, and the small truck would pay $41.90 to bring to go around, pick up the tires, and then bring them to the Westmorland dump. The large truck would pay $47 total gas for the whole trip to the Westmorland station. So you divide it by the number of tires and you get the cost per tire. Okay, that's 44 cents gas cost to pick up the tires and bring them to the dump. And for the big truck, it's less because for a trip they can carry more tires on a single trip. And then I looked at the return trip, in which the truck would be empty. Okay, so in this case, 10 miles per gallon, it's better than 8 miles per gallon because now the truck's empty, it's coming back from the dump, and for the big truck it's 9 miles per gallon instead of 7. Okay, and then change that to liters per kilometer, and then change it to liters per trip because we got to multiply by 65 now because we're not counting the drive around distance. We're only counting the distance back to Brown's Yard. Okay, then again, the cost per liter, same assumption. Dollar cost for gas from dump to back from the dump empty is the liters times the cost per liter. So it's $22 here, $25 there. And then you divide it by the tires per truck, in this case 96, and here it's 211. You get 24 cents cost for the return trip. Why am I charging for the return trip if there are no tires? Well, the trip was made strictly in our imaginary scenario, it was made strictly to deliver tires to the dump. So each tire has to share the cost of the return trip. So now what I do at the bottom here is I add up the cost per tire to the dump and the cost back from the dump without any tires, but we have to add them together. And remember, it's a smaller amount here, partly because the miles per gallon is better, and also we don't have to drive around picking up tires in the neighborhood because that's not, that'll be part of the next trip. Okay, so you add those together and you get 68 cents. Here you get 35 cents. Okay, so then we look at the dumping cost. When they get to the dump, they pay $80, a fee of $80 per ton, whether it's tires or fridges or whatever, but we're assuming all tires just so we can divide it up. And a metric ton is 2,200 pounds per ton. That's normally what's used in Canada. The average weight of a tire is 20 pounds. That's a figure that's available on the internet. And you divide 2,200 by 20, you get 110 tires per ton. Therefore, to calculate the dumping fee per tire, you take $80 per ton, you divide it by 110, and you get 73 cents. Okay, there's your dumping cost per tire. So now we've got the gas cost down here, we've got the dumping cost here. Now let's figure out the labor cost. Okay, 25 bucks per hour. I don't know, maybe that's too generous. I don't know, but whatever, just to be safe. I figure 2 hours to drive to the dump and empty out the contents and drive back. That's the round trip to the dump. About 3 hours to drive around picking up tires. I don't know, it could be 2 hours, who knows, maybe it could be only 1 hour because they're picking up big items, but I allowed 3 hours. Okay, so the total is 5 hours total driving time per round trip. That includes picking up the tires and well, this is only tires in our imaginary trip. So picking up the tires and then going to the dump and coming back. Total of 5 hours times $25 per hour gives you $125 labor to go to do that whole trip. Okay, so for the small truck, you're going to divide, you want dollars per tire, so you take this amount here and you divide it by the number of tires here, and you get this, $1.30 per tire. 96, well, it's the same 96 down here, and over here you do the same for the large truck. You divide it by the number of tires. You divide the total labor cost here by the number of tires. Whoops, there's the labor cost. By the number of tires, you get 59 cents. Okay, so add all three of those together. You take the, for example, this gas cost and this dumping cost. This is all per tire, and this is the labor cost for each tire for this imaginary trip of a truck filled with tires, and you add them all together and you get this figure here. This is the corresponding figure for the small truck, which you can see it costs a bit more. Now, look at the number of tires. How many tires? You know, this is the per tire cost. Well, how many tires? Okay, in 2007, the United States population generated roughly 202 million used tires, and that was passenger tires. If you look at the website here, where I got that from, it says 303 million, but only 2/3 were from passenger tires. That was 2007. The population of the U.S. in 2007 was roughly 301 million. So 202 million divided by 301 million equals 0.67 tires per person. Okay, so then apply that to the people in Kent. Here's the Kent population. Multiply it by 0.66667, whatever, and you get this number, 20,555 used tires. Okay, so how many people would actually leave their tires out for pickup? This is important. Most people, the vast majority of people, will not change their own tires. They will bring them to the garage. The garage takes the old tires, they leave them outside in a pile, and they call up Track in Minto. Track sends their truck. It's free of charge as long as there's 50 or more tires. Then the truck comes and picks up the tires, and they're gone. It doesn't cost anything. Most people do it that way, but there's a small number of people who have the equipment, the tools to take off a tire, put on the new tire, and balance it. You have to balance the wheel. You got to have that thing that spins around to balance your wheels. Not many people have that equipment. So let's assume 1% of people change their own tires. So you multiply 2,555, that's 20,000 tires times 1% is 205 tires. That's the maximum number of tires that are going to be left for pickup every year. Some people will just abandon them by the roadside, and then the neighbors in that area will pick them up, hopefully, and put them by their driveway. But the total number available that are generated per year by people who don't get their tires changed at the garage, that's 205. That's it. That's all it would, according to this scenario. So then you multiply this 205 times the cost per tire, you get 341 for the big truck, 554 for the small truck. Now you divide that number, this number 554, by the population of Kent County, and you get 0.18 cents for the small truck and 0.11 cents for the large truck. I said 0.13 cents, which is between those two numbers. I'm being more conservative in this spreadsheet, but it's still on the mark there. Also, at the end of the video, I wrote that if you change this assumption to 10% of the people in Kent changing their own tires, which is highly unrealistic. People just don't have the equipment. They don't have the time. Even if you do that, it's only 18 cents per person per year, and for the large truck, if you use large trucks, it would be 11 cents per person per year. This is a highly unrealistic assumption. It's far too high. So let's return to our assumption that only 1% of Kent County residents change their own tires, and therefore there's a maximum of 205 tires left or available that need to be picked up. These are used tires we're talking about, whether they're discarded and recovered by some other neighbor, or whether they're left for the garbage truck by the person who owns the tires. That is the maximum number of tires, because all the other tires are brought to the garage anyway in the process of getting the tires changed, and then Track picks them up and brings them to Minto. So this is a reasonable assumption that only 205 per year would be generated. These are used tires. Now, if these are not picked up, then that they will accumulate. Tires don't rot, they don't go away. This year you have 200, next year you have 200, 200, 200, and so on. So they need to be picked up and brought away, and Kent County needs to make that easy for people. So as you can see, the cost, if you have a large truck, the cost is about 1.1 cents per person per year to continue this service, and for the small truck, it's 1.8 cents per person. So still less than 2 cents a person per year this is a very, very reasonable cost to remove these tires from our environment, get them recycled, and also remove significant breeding ground for mosquitoes. Mosquitoes are unpleasant. They also transmit diseases. So we should be generous enough to spend 1 cent or 2 cents per year per person to make sure these tires are removed from our environment. Okay, well, there are the numbers. If you have questions, please email me or give me a phone call. And thank you for watching this video. Okay, bye.